Twitter posted a blog to explain why they had suspended Trump. And I want to go through this because I think this shows you the kind of bad faith that you are dealing with when you are dealing with Twitter, Facebook, Silicon Valley, and the rest. Because this is just unacceptable in my opinion. So they complain that Trump on the 8th tweeted out, the 75 million great American patriots who voted for me, America first, make America great again, will have a giant voice long into the future. They will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape or form. Shortly thereafter, the president tweeted, to all those who've asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January the 20th. Twitter says, we assess the two tweets referenced above under our glorification of violence policy, which aims to prevent the glorification of violence that could inspire others to replicate violent acts, and determined that they were highly likely to encourage and inspire people to replicate the criminal acts that took place on the 6th. Did you take that away from what Trump was saying?
No. Like, why would you? He literally told you not to be violent, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I mean, previously, in previous tweets and in a video he'd put up, he'd denounced the violence, asked his supporters to go home, and said he was in favour of law and order.
So even in the wider context, you cannot take away from that he's inciting violence?
No, I don't agree that he was. And at the speech on the day, he said, we want to peacefully march to the Capitol to make our voices heard, which is completely within their right, does not, to me, say commit violence. And he says the word peacefully. Don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah. Like, no one speaking for Black Lives Matter ever said peaceful.
No, I mean, Chris Cuomo said, show me where it says that protests have to be peaceful.
Yeah,
it's like,
where do protests have to be polite and peaceful?
Yeah,
his exact words.
Yeah,
like, in the Constitution, peacefully assemble.
Yeah,
there you go.
Incidentally, Donald Trump said, peacefully march to the Capitol and make your voices heard. And it's been the people defending Black Lives Matter and Antifa for the last 4 years who are the ones who have been defending the right to violently protest. Interesting how that's suddenly been revoked. I imagine the next time Antifa and Black Lives Matter go out doing what they do, they're not going to be treated with the same kind of strictness. Again, one rule for one rule for another. But anyway, so they say this determination is based on a number of factors, including Trump's statement that he will not be attending the inauguration is being received by a number of his supporters as further confirmation that the election was not legitimate, and is seen as him disavowing his previous claim made via 2 tweets by his deputy chief of staff, Dan Scavino, that there would be an orderly transition.
What? Like,
I don't know.
That's just coming out of their own heads.
Yeah, that's
like,
just...
Who else is saying that?
Yeah, we're just interpreting this as him asking for further violence and saying that this is even less legitimate. It's like, but he's agreed to a peaceful transfer of power. I mean, I wouldn't go to Joe Biden's inauguration if I were him either, because the bitter blood that has been left by this political cycle, I mean, it seems kind of ridiculous, doesn't it? Like, they've been calling him Hitler for the past 4 years, and he's supposed to stand there and smile as he hands this thing off. I mean, that's weird. I can't imagine they want him there, unless it's just to screech at him. I mean, can you imagine what these people would be like in the same room as him? But anyway, so I didn't take violence and delegitimization from him saying there'll be a peaceful transfer of power. And they say the second tweet may also serve as an encouragement to those potentially considering violent acts at the inauguration, that the inauguration would be a safe target as he would not be attending. It's like, what? I'm not going to this inauguration. Right, so it's safe for us to attack. That's not what he said. And I think that's a massive leap in logic there to get to that point.
Like, what a paranoid person do you have to be to get to that point?
Exactly. This is paranoid and bad faith. This is giving him no opportunity to do the right thing. He's trying, I think, to do the right thing, and we'll continue seeing in a bit later on in the podcast what he's trying to do, and obviously trying to do the right thing. But this is just totally unfair. The use of the words American patriots to describe some of his supporters is also being interpreted as support for those committing violent acts at the US Capitol. Just calling them patriots, the people who support him as American patriots, which, to be honest with you, I think is a fair description. I mean, look at the number of American flags, look at the way that they dress, look at the things that they say, look at the things that they support. I mean, calling them American patriots just seems like a charitable interpretation of their own activism. So apparently, but this is now support for them. And the mention of his supporters having a giant voice long into the future, and that they will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form, is being interpreted as further indication that President Trump does not plan to facilitate an orderly transition, and instead he plans to continue to support, empower, and shield those who believe he won the election. Plans for future armed protests have already begun proliferating on and off Twitter, including a proposed secondary attack on the US Capitol and state buildings on the 17th of January 2021. Oh, if people are organising violence on your platform, Jack, shouldn't Apple be deplatforming you about now? Shouldn't Google be deplatforming you about now? But anyway, nonsense. I mean, I don't agree that Trump...
I mean, also, people have their voice listened to. Okay, let's just take that bit first.
Yeah.
Well, okay, any politician says that after they've lost an election. Let's talk about Jeremy Corbyn saying, what is it? We lost this election, but we won the argument.
Exactly.
It's like, our voice is going to be carried on. Okay,
Yeah.
whatever. So shut up. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And then the other part of it was, what was it again? So it will be heard long as and we won't be treated unfairly,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
What, do you want to treat them unfairly, Jack?
Yeah, exactly. It's like BBC complaining that QAnon's trying to stop the satanic pedos. It's like, oh, sorry.
Like, I don't know what they believe, but that doesn't sound bad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, why is that bad? But that's the thing. The fact that it's like, no, this is being treated as a call to arms, in a sense, it's not a call to arms at all.
But by Twitter.
By Twitter. But this was why that they suspended Trump, because apparently they are interpreting literally everything he says, even the calls for non-violence, as in bad faith and as an interpretation towards violence. And so this 2 days ago now, I should have covered it yesterday, but there's too much going on, but I couldn't let this go, right? So it is in this context that we get this tweet and this series of tweets from Twitter's public policy Twitter account. And this is just amazing. Now, I don't know anything about the Ugandan election, but I understand that Twitter has apparently, according to Twitter...
They've been
deplatformed. Twitter deplatformed some of their politicians, I believe. And that's why they struck back and deplatformed Twitter itself. And Twitter... Oh, I can't believe you're silencing us.
I think it's a little bit more than that. I believe
go on.
Largely the internet was turned off for a lot of people.
Right, okay.
And subsequently all the social medias were, so it wasn't just Twitter.
Right.
But, Twitter, build your own internet then.
Yeah,
Go on.
build your own Uganda.
Yeah.
Like, ahead of the Ugandan election, we're hearing reports that internet service providers are being ordered to block social media and messaging apps. We strongly condemn internet shutdowns. They are hugely harmful, violate basic human rights and the principles of the open internet. Earlier this week, in close coordination with our peers, we suspended a number of accounts targeting the election in Uganda. If we can attribute any of this activity to state-backed actors, we will disclose our information. Access to information and freedom of expression, including public conversation on Twitter, is never more important than during democratic processes, particularly elections. Wow. Just staggering. The idea that moral consistency is not important is actually maybe I should do something a bit bigger on this, because there's real concerns when you have someone who literally just says, I don't care about moral consistency, because what they're saying is they don't consent to the concept of ethics. They don't consent that they should be governed by a moral structure of right and wrong that other people can judge them by. What they're saying is it's all in our favour and none of it against us. So this is, this is, was it Callicles, I think it is, from one of Plato's dialogues, is the immoral man who rejects morality, who rejects ethics, rejects the idea of engaging in an ethical system. And part of the quest of ethics through the 20th century has been to explain to people why they should actually consider themselves as ethical creatures, why they should actually be concerned with this. And Twitter is just rejecting this by rejecting any kind of moral consistency. Because, when it comes to it, they'd rather just say, look, we'd rather be inconsistent and be in control and have the power. That's not acceptable, man. But anyway, talking about injustices and lack of ethics, Parler obviously got digitally lynched for existing and not being under the heel of Silicon Valley. But Parler's mistake was not realizing just how far this cathedral spreads. And this, of course, meant that Twitter could get its primary rival deplatformed from the Amazon Web Service. So Parler is still offline, but I'm sure they'll be back in about a week or so, because I'm sure they're going to get their own servers now that they've made a name for themselves, and obviously are going to be able to get back online. And I can't wait until they do. In the meantime, Minds, Gab, and BitChute, and all of the others, all still up. Follow us all on there. Follow the Lotus on there, because nobody's going to be on Silicon Valley platforms for long, in my opinion. But anyway, this was Google said, well, our long-standing policies require that apps displaying user-generated content have moderation policies and enforcement that removes egregious posts content like posts that incite violence. Well, you need to remove Twitter by Twitter's own admission then, because Twitter was a place that organised violence. I've seen
a pretty good breakdown of the individuals who went into the Capitol, and there's a website that's just logged where they were posting, I'm in the Capitol or something like that, right? All on Facebook, all on Twitter,
well,
all on Instagram.
We'll get to this.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, that's the point, isn't it, right? But anyway, so They say, in the light of this ongoing and urgent public safety threat, we are suspending the app's listings from the Play Store until it addresses these issues. Well, no, a rule for Parler and not a rule for anyone else. Again, the lack of moral consistency is a rejection of the concept of ethics. And they say it has seen accusations that the Parler app was used to plan, coordinate, and facilitate the attacks on the US Capitol. Well, okay, A, I don't think we should characterize them as attacks. But B, accusations are not evidence. Accusations are not proof. And John Matsey had replied, well, Parler has no way to organise anything.
Well, let's just take them as true. You make those accusations, fine. They're accusations that's been done on your platform.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. By that same standard, we should be deplatforming all of your platforms. I mean, how much terrorism has gone through Google? Google controls most of the internet. I imagine a vast amount of terrorism that happens across the Middle East uses Google services. No one cares. But anyway, John Matsey had replied saying, look, Parler doesn't have like organising groups and stuff, so it's got no way to organise anything. Pointed out that Facebook groups and events had been used to organise this action. But Apple said, we don't care. We won't distribute apps that present dangerous and harmful content. So both Google and Apple are just giving Parler the Melian dialogue. It's like, sorry, we're just more powerful than you. You can appeal to reason, you can appeal to morality, you can appeal to future consequences, but right here and right now, you're getting the treatment that the Melians got from the Athenians. And as the Washington Post published an article explaining, oh, actually, hang on a second. Oh, no, it was Facebook and Instagram that was used, and Twitter that was used primarily to organise this. And things we know this because all the Parler data was like hacked and released, and I don't know whether it's true or not, but nobody has managed to link that hacked data to the protesters yet. Which, I mean, surprises me genuinely. I would have thought that these people would have been on Parler just because they would have been part of the online ecosphere about...
Well, I imagine a large amount were, but the point
Sure.
here is about the planning of trying to go in. Okay, well, where was that done?
On Facebook.
If there are no groups on Parler, but there are groups on Facebook.
As the Washington Post shows. In the days leading up to the last week's march on the Capitol, supporters of the president promoted it extensively on Facebook and Facebook-owned Instagram and used the services to organise bus trips to Washington. More than 100,000 users posted on hashtags affiliated with the movement, prompted by baseless claims of election fraud, including hashtag Stop the Steal and hashtag Fight for Trump. The details emerging from researchers who have combed the service in recent days shed new light on how Facebook services were used to bring attention to and boost attendance at the rally, which turned violent when a pro-Trump mob stormed the Capitol. This is just consistent narrative that you're not going to get the end of. The Stop the Steal hashtag was used by 128,000 people and used to coordinate the rally. And when asked about this, Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg deflected the blame, saying that actually it was Parler and Gab that were the problem. We have effective moderation policies. And it's like, well, no, you don't.
Hang on. No one's alleging here, or in the other one, that Parler caused the storming, because that's the only bit anyone cares about, the violence.
No.
The gathering of people for buses, the gathering of people for a political rally, none of that's a crime, none of that's wrong.
And none of it happened on Parler.
But even if it did, who cares?
Well, I guess that'll be Facebook's defense, won't it?
Yeah, but that's the thing I'm seeing here. Like, everyone's seeing, like, oh, no, they gathered this rally that then turned violent, therefore they're responsible. What? Like, how does that make any sense?
Because apparently the Trump supporters are unthinking animals who are puppeteered by social media platforms, in their opinion. But this is just to document the manifest injustice that is going on by people who have now divorced themselves from any kind of coherent ethical process. Like, this isn't about fairness. This isn't about justice.
It's not about reason.
It's not about reason. This is about destroying an opponent because they're considered to be dangerous because they are in opposition. And that's where we are. That's what happened to Parler. And obviously the cancel culture mob has been going for Gab as well. But the great thing about Gab, and I love watching Torba post about this on Twitter, because the Gab still has a Twitter account, there were people saying, okay, where's Gab's services hosted? And Torba and Gab had just replied saying, we host our own. You know, basically shut up communist, suck it communist, something like that. It's like, good for you.
You told us to build our own. We did.
Yeah.
Now what? You have no power over us.
Exactly. Now you can just shut up. And Gab has had something like 600,000 new signups, millions of new views, and 1.7 million new signups actually yesterday. And I mean, it's become quite slow because of the amount of people using it, and because of course they can't just use Amazon to annex a whole swathe of new servers or anything. But okay, fine. I'm willing to live with that until they can get it up back and running, as long as we've got somewhere. I mean, it works. It's just a bit slower than usual. But I imagine they're still increasing the size of it, because where else are the Trump supporters going to go? Where else are these people have all been deplatformed going to go? I mean, destroying Parler.
I mean, Parler is gone. Doesn't
Yeah.
work.
It's mad.